This is Join Us in France, episode 472. 472. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where we talk about France. Everyday life in France, great places to visit in France, French culture, history, gastronomy, and news related to travel to France. Today I bring you a trip report with Jennifer Hanneman about planning a group trip to France. I've organized many group tours, some small, some big, and it's not something that comes easily, especially if it's your first time. Jennifer and I chat about how to pull this off, so stay tuned. Pro tips coming your way. This podcast is supported by donors and listeners who buy my tours and services, including my itinerary consult service, my GPS self-guided tours of Paris on the Voice Map app, or take a day trip with me around the Southwest in my electric car. You can browse all of that at my boutique, joinusinfrance.com/boutique. And right now, you can also join the bootcamp in May 2024. Come to Toulouse in May, hang out with Elise and I for about 10 days. You'll also be with a wonderful group of fellow listeners and Francophiles for that time. You'll improve your French because you'll be taking classes every morning at your level, of course. We had such a good time in May 2023 that we wanted to do it again. There are only a limited number of seats. Once the bus is full, it's full. To find out about the Bootcamp 2024, go to joinusinfrance.com/boutique, where you can read all the details and also reserve your spot. There will not be a magazine part of the podcast today because I am pre-recording this intro well in advance on account of being on vacation in Utah to enjoy the snow, the wintry Christmas, and hang out with my husband's wonderful family for Christmas. But I do want to thank my patrons who keep this show going and invite you to join them and me and become a patron. Lots of goodies for patrons every month. To join this wonderful community of Francophiles, go to patreon.com/join us. That's Patreon. Join us, no spaces or dashes. And to support Elise, go to patreon.com/EliseArt, ELYSART. And if you're thinking of booking anything, an itinerary planning session, or get my GPS self-guided tours of Paris at a discount, or secure your spot for the bootcamp, go to joinusinfrance.com/boutique. It's all there. My thanks to podcast editors Anne and Christian Codovan, who produced the transcripts and make it sound good and do an awful lot of work this week to help me get all these episodes lined up. And I want to let you know that the sound this week is a little bit different. My fault, not theirs. I forgot to check my settings before I hit record, and they still managed to make it sound good. Next week on the podcast, a short episode on Christmas. Happy holidays, you guys, whatever you celebrate. May you have a wonderful time with friends and family. Bonjour, Jennifer Hanneman, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Bonjour, comment ça va?
Très bien, et vous?
Très bien, merci.
So we are going to talk about something that is very difficult to do, which you did, and I want to know how you survived. You put together a trip for a family of, let's see, I didn't count. How many was it?
There were 12 of us in total, 8 adults, 4 children, and really 4 families coming together for this trip in the end. It's really for high school, my sister, and then 2 other high school friends and all of our families that came together. We were all turning 50 within the last year, and we decided, let's do a big trip to kind of celebrate. And
that's
we
great.
wanted to go to France.
That's great. Yes, and the youngest kid was 8 or something? Yeah.
Yes, there was actually 2 8-year-olds. One who was just about 9 and the other who just turned 8, but 2 8-year-olds and 2 13-year-olds.
Right. Okay. So, big group. And did you stay together the whole time or did you split up at times?
We split up at times. So a few of us started me and my sister's family, we started together in Troyes. And then a third family joined us to go up to Lille and the World War I sites. And then the fourth family joined us in Deauville and for the World War II. And then when we went to Provence to end our trip for the week in Villa. So we kind of grew as the trip grew. Afterwards, some stayed in Paris and some saw Paris before. So we kind of just all met up in Deauville. But we were a pretty big group for the whole way.
Yeah. Okay. And just keeping track of who's arriving what day and where are we meeting them and are we having dinner that night or not? And blah, blah, blah. That's just gets, it adds complications to all of that. All right. So let's talk about the things that worked really well for your family, for your group. You gave me your 10 favorite things that worked out. And I want to hear about those, both in terms of why you enjoyed the experience and why it worked for a group in your case.
Yeah. So the first thing was the World War I sites and staying in Lille and visiting Vimy and Beaumont-Hamel. So World War I sites for Canadians. This worked out amazing for a couple of different reasons. One was that we based ourselves in Lille. And that one we were torn because my husband and I have done this area before. We've toured the sites and we loved Arras, which is probably a place where more people gravitate to if you're going to go see the sites. But we had a half a day in Belgium to see the Canadian sites up in Belgium and a full day in the Vimy area. And we knew that Lille is just perfectly located between the two. So it's less driving time for the 9 of us to drive all over to the different sites. So basing in Lille was amazing. And it was my coup de cœur of the trip, I would say. It's the town I didn't expect to love and I fell in love with. Just the city, not town really, the city. It just had so much energy and everyone was out on patios and we just showed up and I just loved the architecture. Everything about it was just very, very pretty. So highly recommended as a place to base for World War I sites. So that base worked out perfect.
We should say that your trip was in June and July 2023. So that means that you had good weather.
Yeah, we had great weather. In Lille, it was just such a lovely temperature at that time of year. And because the days are so long, it's really easy to be out and about, even with the kids. So that was great. The other thing about Lille that's great is just the selection of hotels, right? Because we needed rooms that could fit. The families wanted to stay together. So we needed rooms that could also accommodate having children and not small children, like children in the room. And the hotels that we stayed at, the Novotel, their hotel rooms were perfect size for families and great price. If you book well in advance, we like good deals. So that part was really awesome and very reasonable. We also knew, how are we going to get around in this area? I think that was one of the biggest things that we had to think about because it's not easy to move all of us, to Vimy or to Beaumont-Hamel. So we ended up renting a van for the 9 of us that were doing that portion of the trip. And we were very worried because we don't have travel light. So for those families who are thinking, oh my gosh, I bring a lot of luggage, myself and all my kids, the van was amazing because it was built for 9 people. It's not an SUV where you're trying to fit people in.
So what brand van was it?
I don't remember the brand. And I can find out though.
Yeah, if you can find out, I'll put it in the show notes. I mean, but it was not an SUV.
No, it was an actual 9-person passenger van. And because of that, the storage for luggage in the back was amazing. It was built for having 9 people's luggage. It felt like we joked we had our own little minibus. It was just very easy for us to get in and out, very comfortable for 9 people to sit. And I think the only caveat there is my brother-in-law did all the driving with the van, which was amazing. He was also very comfortable driving a bigger vehicle. And, there was a few tight spaces, but you just have to be comfortable driving 9 people around. So that'd be the one caveat because it is bigger. But in northern France, it's not, the tight spaces aren't as many as in southern France. The roads are easy to drive. And so it wasn't challenging from that perspective at all.
That's a very important point. If you're going to Provence with a big old van, you will not fit anywhere. Provence is tight. Everything is tight. The streets, the parking, everything is tight. They're packed in. It's very expensive land. They pack it in really, really close. Lille, I haven't paid attention, but I'm sure it's a lot roomier by comparison.
It's a lot roomier. The only thing in Lille was because we had the big van, we couldn't fit in underground parking, obviously, which is the majority, like around our hotel, that seemed to be the majority of the parking. There was like an open parking lot right next to the hotel, which was perfect, but very expensive because it was meant to be short-term parking. You could stay overnight, but you paid to stay overnight.
Yeah.
But because we were splitting with 3 families, it was kind of worth it for us to just, one small expense.
Right. So if your van was big enough to not fit into an underground parking lot, you were bigger than 2 meters 10 tall. So you were probably, it had to be a big old Mercedes 9-person van.
My husband texted me that it was a Renault traffic van.
a Renault traffic. Usually they fit in parking garages, but perhaps that one was particularly tall.
It might have cleared it, cleared it. It was just under, I think it was around 2 meters high. So we just weren't going to risk it. We looked like pig faces there. But honestly, driving around northern France, definitely compared to south, I would never suggest that van for south, but in northern France, it was easy driving.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yes, we didn't go through all the places you went, but you went several places. You started in the north of France with World War II sites, and then you made your way down to...
We started with the World War I sites in Vimy and Beaumont-Hamel, and then we went and based ourselves in Deauville for a few days and saw the World War II site.
So that's Normandy, yeah?
Yeah, in Normandy. And then we all we had our 9-person van, and the other family joined us with their own car. We all drove back to Charles de Gaulle and then took a TGV down to the south of France. And from there, we got our own cars and we rented a villa for a week, but we each had our own cars for that portion of it. But yeah, we started in the World War I sites up in the north.
So World War I, World War II, Provence.
Exactly. World War I and World War II, Provence. Now, my sister and her family and my husband, we did Troyes as well for a couple of days at the beginning. So there was 6 of us for that portion right at the beginning. But the group trip really started with the World War I sites.
Yeah. And Troyes is in what area? It's a shame, but I couldn't tell you.
It's in the Champagne region. And it is about a little over 2 hours from Paris south, but an hour south of Epernay. So it is, a little bit lesser known Champagne region, actually, which is one of the reasons why we chose to go there.
Okay. So it's kind of far south from Reims. And congratulations for saying it right, by the way, because it's Troyes. Yeah. And you knew to say Troyes and not Troyes. Good for you.
Yes.
Are you a French teacher or something? Or did you live in France?
I speak French. Yeah, I speak French. My husband's French Canadian. He's a French teacher here in Ottawa. So surrounded by French on regular basis.
Yeah, yes. Okay. So you started in Troyes and then you went to the Lille area. Okay. All right. Let's get back to our list of things that you enjoyed. The first thing you list is visiting the Canadian World War I sites in France, which include Vimy and Beaumont-Hamel, like you mentioned. And you think Canadians should really see those. Tell us why a little bit.
They should see both of them, I think. Vimy, because it is so important from a Canadian history perspective in defining our country. It also is just so unbelievably beautiful as a site, as a place to learn about what happened there. And there's nothing more moving than you drive into the site and you see, this land has been donated in perpetuity from the government of France, and you just see the towns around. Like, there's just something so unbelievably moving to, hear about the history of Vimy and then to go see it and see how impactful it was to the area. And the site itself is so breathtaking in my mind. Like it's just gorgeous. And there's lots to see there. You get to go into the tunnels, and you can see some of the trenches, and there's a lot of things to do. And of course, cemeteries in that area. Mm-hmm. So for Vimy, I just think it's like one of those sites that is important for defining Canadian history. Beaumont-Hamel, which is the Newfoundland Memorial, I think is important to understand more about the tragedy of war, like the just heartbreaking part of war, the unbelievable loss at the Somme. And this is really where my husband made us all cry a little bit, just telling stories about, what happened that day and what happened with the Newfoundland Regiment, who, were devastated by the losses that happened. Everyone was, of course, devastated by the losses that happened over the course of the battles of the Somme. So I think it's important to see this beautiful site, Vimy, where we can be proud of what we contributed, and then also see the devastation of war around the Somme. Those two sites in particular, we only did 2. And that would be one tip that I'd have for group travel is, really understand your group and how much you're willing to pack in a day. There's, if you look at any of the standard tours in that area, there's like 4 or 5 sites you'll go see, and they're wonderful. Yeah. And if you have time, they're amazing to see them. But for our group, we knew less is more. Let's spend the time at these 2 places, be able to help the kids ask questions, let them ask questions, absorb what's happening, and take away instead of we've covered off 4 or 5 things. And that was important.
Yes, that's vital. And especially when you have children in the group or elderly relatives, it would be the same. You cannot rush from site to site in search for the best one. You have to decide ahead of time which is the best one for your group, and then go there. Less is more in the sense of you have more time to really tell the story. Like, it sounds like your husband is very good at explaining the history. And if you have someone like that with you, then obviously you need to just stay put, absorb this part and then move on slower.
Totally agree. And at Vimy, of course, they have guides who will give you wonderful tours of the tunnels and, help you out when you're there. But it is, I would say taking the time at a few places, especially if you're traveling with children, like you said, elder, it is important. And it also, right in between the 2 is the town of Arras. And that made for a really lovely lunch. It made for a really nice day because we could, one thing with our group is we were not a go group. We like to sit and eat and talk. And so we didn't overplan it because we needed to leave time for us to really kind of enjoy another spot in France as well.
Yeah. That's great advice. Don't pack too much in, and do select a good, Arras is a beautiful town and there's plenty of restaurants. If you can go downtown, you're going to find a nice restaurant with a nice terrace with good weather. So, that's a lot more pleasant than rushing through the sites and eating a sandwich, those are your 2 choices, really.
It's a trade-off that you have to think about of what you want your day to be, right? When my husband and I did it, just the 2 of us, we packed in way more during the day and we spent longer time there, but it was just the 2 of us. So it was quite easy for us to kind of do that. When you're a bigger group, you want to really think about when are people going to hit their travel wall, and you don't want to get there.
It's exactly the same when I'm planning a trip for a group, when we do the boot camp or we've done groups before. I go first by myself and I try to be as inclusive as possible just to see what it's like. And then I can select, So the first time you go, perhaps you're not as selective, or you could rely on other people's selection. Like you've done it. It's great to have your recommendations.
Yeah. And my husband actually brings students on trips to France, to World War I, World War II sites all the time. So he really knows how to maneuver, what it will mean for a group. He put a lot of thought into, what do we keep and what do we not do for the trip, which I think is quite helpful. So this is where I also would recommend a guide for some, depending on what people, especially for a group, to think about, having a guide for parts of it, just so that you get more context, as you're going, and a guide will understand distances and what it takes to kind of see sites.
Yes. And obviously it's best if you can have read a book about the area or about what happened in particular events, or seen a movie perhaps, or, get yourself self-education always help. I'm sure your husband has more than self-education in this regard, but even self-education helps tremendously. And then hiring a guide locally if you don't have the time to do all the reading and all of that, because you can talk to your guide before you get there and they can help you select something that's appropriate for you. That's very good. All right, let's move on to the south of France here. Now we're down to Arles and what I call Roman Provence. Arles is a beautiful place for Roman ruins.
Yes, I fell in love with this little town as well. The energy, we only stopped by for the day, and it was only a smaller portion of the group. It was only, I think, 3 of us that went to Arles for that little tour around. But we went to go see the amphitheater, and I was just like, I need to come back here. I didn't expect the Spanish influence. I definitely love the Van Gogh aspect to it.
Yes.
And art. It was just a lovely city. Yeah,
that's what's cool about Arles, is that it's not super touristy. I mean, it is touristy, but not as much as other places in Provence. And they have a lot of absolutely stunning Roman ruins. Plus, they have a lot of Van Gogh stuff. Now, Van Gogh only spent about 15 months in Arles, but they're milking it for all it's worth.
They definitely are.
Yeah, it's a good place. It's a good place.
It is. Yes. And to what you said, it doesn't feel touristy. We'd gone to a few towns and it's definitely very geared to tourists. This one felt like the shops were for the locals, and the areas, it just felt a little bit more lived in. And I loved that. That made me say, I would come back and maybe want a base in Arles to do more adventures in the south of France, just because there were so many interesting restaurants and it was a pretty city, but it also felt very much like a lived in city. Yeah, I will fully admit that we jumped on the tourist train and we ate at the Van Gogh Cafe, which it felt, you're like, oh, I'm eating at the Van Gogh Cafe in Arles. Like, this is totally geared to tourists. But I loved every minute of it because we could take a photo and say, this is the painting. And we're sitting in the painting. And that was really cool.
Yes. Now, keep in mind that Van Gogh had an amazing imagination. And what he painted is not exactly what you see, okay?
No, that's true.
He had a lot going on in his head. Yes, fantastic. Great recommendation. Arles is, I think, not to be missed. And then they have the Roman Arlat festival, which I think is in August. Don't quote me. Check it. But there's 2 weeks in the summer where they do all sorts of in costume events and fights on the streets and things like that. And it's called Arlat, Arlate, a festival. And then your third favorite was visiting the US and Canadian World War II D-Day sites in Normandy. So you did a private tour. Who gave you a tour?
Normandy Excursions was the name of the company that did the tour. They were great because, for a few reasons, they did a great job. One is they had to figure out how to accommodate our group. They're used to doing tours of 8 people max. And they said, well, let us go get the band that you need. And, they kind of really figured it out from a custom tour perspective. They came and picked us up in Deauville, which is not super, it's an hour and a half away from Pointe d'Arc, which is the starting point for most of the US tours. So we were appreciative for that as well, that they accommodated, where we were staying. Yeah. And the guide was great. He knew a lot of great history. Obviously, he knew his stuff and was great with interacting with the group. So I thought, that was really fun. I think the only thing about that tour, why, it was number 3 on the list, which is still high, is because it was a long day, but we were pretty aggressive with our schedule in doing both US sites and Canadian sites in one day. Again, we pared it down a lot, but we still needed to, at the end, one of the sites we were going to stop at.
Yeah, obviously. And also you were staying in Deauville, which most people don't do, That's 3 hours just driving, pretty much. Because between Deauville and Bayeux is probably an hour, 20 minutes or something. And like you said, you either start in Bayeux or in Pointe du Hoc or place like that.
Yeah. And that was another thing we're thinking about the group. Because my husband and I have done those sites too together, and we stayed in Bayeux and we loved it. But Bayeux is inland, and our group, they wanted to get a seaside resort experience. And well, there's actually two reasons for Deauville. One was the seaside resort experience in addition. So we had a full day of just relaxing and enjoying Deauville, like a break of history tour.
Very nice, very nice.
And it's such a beautiful little place. I think the decision to stay there was awesome for us, even with the distance on that one day. And the other thing is we had to get from Normandy back to Paris to get down south. And that meant, getting up we didn't want to get down south late. So we had to get up at, say, 8 a.m. to drive from Deauville to get to Charles de Gaulle, to get the TGV, to get down. If we stayed in Bayeux, it added that extra distance to get to Charles de Gaulle, which meant trying to, wake a group of 12 and get us organized that 1 hour earlier in the morning.
Yeah.
We didn't want to do that. And so we said, we're okay with the distance on the tour day and making accommodations there to have that little bit closer proximity to Paris when we were all trying to load up all our stuff.
That's always a big challenge with a group. Even if everybody is, really compliant, it's difficult to get that many people moving.
It is, and everyone was.
You're Canadians. Of course you're compliant.
We were like Canadian Americans, but we all get along really well. And I think we all were very respectful of we can't miss this train or the tour starts at this time. So people did rally and get together, but regardless, you're still going to have a few delays here and there. Right?
So,
the last minute bathroom breaks and things like that.
Yeah. So you drove your van and car, perhaps, back to CDG. Then you had to go to Gare de Lyon.
We took the TGV right from Charles de Gaulle.
Okay. So you didn't have to do. Okay. Oh, that's smart. Yes.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why we did it was interesting because we were really trying to figure out where do we drop off this big van and another car. And none of us wanted to drive in Paris.
Yeah.
So we said, it worked out well for the itinerary. We'll just pick up and drop off at CDG and take the TGV straight down from there.
Right.
So that worked out great.
Yes. If you go to Gare de Lyon, you're going to have trains pretty much every hour going to Arles. If you do it from the TGV station at CDG, perhaps you have 2 or 3 in a day. But if you time it right, it's way easier.
And I'll say, my other trip for group travel is we planned the logistics for the beginning part when we were coming and going. We researched that I wouldn't say to the minute, but we did a lot of research on how are we going to get from point A to B.
Yes.
And it was all planned. We booked trains super early. The moment they released the tickets, we bought the trains. We had researched the schedule because, we knew you have to move 12 people from one place to the other. Yeah. It's not going to be easy to do.
Your number 4 is Beau de Provence et Carrière de Lumière. I could not agree more. That's so beautiful.
It's amazing. And it's just such a, I don't know. I've been there before. I just find that it's just, you can't go wrong by going there. The scenery is beautiful. Even if you're not that interested in the castle, but we still love the castle. Yeah. The food was great. Everything about Les Baux was just such an incredible experience. And it was a chance to see, a little hilltop town. And then the Carrière de Lumière, blew my mind. And I'd gone before and I was like, it's just so amazing.
It's so fun. Yeah, it's so fun to just stand there and look and listen and open your eyes and experience. It's just a full body experience almost because the music is loud and the images are bright and it is just so good.
It's so amazing. And I'd say the kids, so thinking again of our group with kids, they loved it too. And I think they've got it down in terms of it was a half an hour, I think, the one of the shows that we stayed to watch. So just enough time for them to just be in awe And then by the end, they're ready to go, right? So it wasn't, okay, kids, now sit for 2 hours. We're going to watch, this art show, this beautiful, illuminative, immersive art show, because I think that would have been a bit too much. It was just the right amount of time spent there.
Right. And the chateau at Les Baux, I don't know that you were probably there too early, but they also have stuff for kids at the chateau at Les Baux, but it's just during French school vacations, and you probably were too early for that.
That's interesting. Again, my husband and I had gone there before. We'd gone to a few of these places before, and we were like, we had seen, the catapults and everyone in costume.
That's just French vacation times.
Yeah. But you know what? The kids loved the town. They were running around the castle, like different areas of the ruins and,
like you said, it's your chance to see a hilltop village and castle. And it's not the most scenic one in Provence, but it is pretty good. It is pretty good.
It was good for touristy stuff too. It was like every 2 seconds is a little shop.
And the Santon and stuff like that. Yeah, it's good. Number 5 is Châteauneuf du Pape. You had a wine tour. Tell us about that.
It was great. We did a private wine tour. So with a big group, you're going to be able to get a private wine tours at a deal. It was fantastic. We had 2 guides. The main person was Romain.
Romain something or other?
Yes, that's it. He runs his own tours, and he also has a little wine shop in Châteauneuf du Pape proper. So it was really nice. He had arranged, he's grown up in the area, so he knows and has relationships with the winemakers. So to me, it was a very different experience. And if you go to, say, California or even some of the bigger wine producers in France, because we were like by ourselves in these wineries, sometimes without even the winemaker. It was just Romain and us. Because of the size of our group, we had another guide with us who also does private tours on her own, and they help each other out when they have big groups, which is really nice. Yeah. And they were just super knowledgeable about wine. And we got to go in the fields, you see a little bit there, and then you got to see different styles of Châteauneuf du Pape, which I think was really interesting for us because, you tend to think, oh, this is like a really very specific style of wine from the France region. And we tasted, some of the younger winemakers coming up with some newer blends and things. That was very cool. And the place we went for lunch was just out of this world.
Yeah, you sent me a list. Let's see if I see it. Hostellerie des Fines Roches.
That's it.
Hostellerie Château des Fines Roches.
Yes. You drive up. You drive up to this castle. So that alone is impressive. And then the lunch, it's a little bit more of a splurge, but it was delicious. So it just made for a really, really nice day.
A special day.
The kids were troopers. They did well through the whole day, even though this was very much more an adult day.
Not for them, yeah.
They did well. They didn't complain. They did good.
That's great. Well done, kids. That's great.
Yeah.
Cassis. You went to Cassis, obviously. Yes. Lovely place. Good to go with kids. Did you do a boat ride? Let's see.
We tried to do a boat ride, but it was very windy that day. So we had booked a private boat for the day, but they had actually said to us, if we do take you, it's going to be for only an hour and it's going to be rough. And so we made the call, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
To,
Weather.
It was okay because the town, of course, is so lovely that we just all explored the town and had a great time exploring the town, had a nice long lunch. We just had a nice day there down at the water. I would definitely want to go back and do like Calanque and get a...
Yeah, there's more to do, obviously. Yeah, but I don't think you're going to hike the Calanque with a big group and kids and stuff. Perhaps some people do it, but they have to be used to this. It has to be something they do as a family because this is not an easy, walk in the park.
No. Yeah. No. And that wasn't, I think know your group well. Like that's not something I think our group would really want to do. Yeah. We'd rather take take a long coffee in the morning, a long lunch, and do some shopping in between.
Yeah.
And enjoy it. Like they did walk to the beach, but the water was quite cold. It was, it's beginning of end of June, beginning of July. So
Yeah, that part of the Med is always chilly. It just is. If you want warm Mediterranean, you have to go south of Barcelona.
Yeah.
And then it's warm. It's lovely. Let's see. Deauville is next. So you mentioned it already. So we're going to go through this one fast. It's an adorable little town with some history as well. So it's a good place. And French people go there a lot. Visitors, not as much, I don't think. And it's probably because most visitors from North America will go to the World War II sites, which happen to be closer to Bayeux. Most of them, or Sainte-Mère-Église. But Deauville is, you enjoyed just the day you spent at Deauville.
Yes, I think I hear that it's like the Hamptons for Parisians, can get away. I could see totally why. And it's to me, 2-3 days. We were there 3 nights, 2 full days, like 2 days, one of being the tour day and one just to chill and relax and enjoy the town. And it was really lovely for that. Enough time to wander the streets, do a little shopping, do a little, it was a little bit too chilly and kind of rain. So we didn't actually go to the boardwalk, but I hear the boardwalk is quite lovely.
Yeah.
And I'll say the hotel we stayed there was awesome. It was, again, the Novotel. We love the, Alicorp brand in Europe. And that Novotel Deauville the food was great. Like, it was just so good.
Yeah, this is worth expounding on a little bit. There are lots of visitors who have this idea that they need to go to a boutique hotel. And that's fine. If there is one that you know and love, have at it. But if you want a sure thing with a certain level of service, Accor hotels are better because you can expect to have the same kind of bedding, the same kind of pillows, the same kind of desk presence, the same kind of breakfast, and not always made. I mean, sometimes you just don't, some people don't love that, but you know what to expect. And that is very important, especially with a group.
And with the kids and the facility. So for us, I think we quickly settled on, something in the Accor brand because also it does have a European feel. The rooms are set up a little bit different. So while it doesn't have the charm of, a boutique hotel in that way, this hotel, to me had the location was amazing, right in front of the beach. If it had been lovely, we would have been right there with a wonderful outdoor patio right in the front that we did enjoy quite a bit. And it had things set up, playroom for the kids with an indoor pool, which the kids love the indoor pool, right? And to find an indoor pool in Normandy it wasn't a deal breaker for us by any stretch. It was a really nice perk and they did use it. So that to me was like, check.
Yeah.
And, so the boutique hotels were hard to accommodate our group, our size. That was the other thing. We looked at a bunch of different options, but it was just hard to accommodate what we needed from a room size and, the different things.
Yeah. Okay. Number 8 is Lille. And you mentioned it at the beginning. You really liked staying there, that you thought it was a beautiful town. I'm hoping to go to Lille later to visit because I have been there, but it's been so long. I don't really remember. I mean, when I see photos of it, I'm like, oh, yes, I've been here, but it's just too fuzzy in my head.
I was impressed. Maybe because we had heard from a few people, Lille, that's not on the top of people's list of places to go when on vacation. But like I said, as a base and as just the town itself, I thought was really pretty. And the food was amazing. To
us, it's the north of France. It's like, it's always rainy, always cold. We're like, why would you go there? Most French people have a bad attitude about Lille, but it is a beautiful city.
Yeah.
Number 9 is exploring the Roussillon area. Yes.
Yes. So that was something my husband and I kind of did together. And this was maybe to another group trip suggestion, is that for the south of France, everyone had their own car. And, that was one of our premises. You need to give everyone space to the vacation, how they like to vacation.
Yeah.
So my husband are get up and go kind of people. We like to get up in the morning, explore a town, and you'll see us by the pool at 3:00. but others prefer a sleep in or to enjoy their coffee in the morning, and they'll explore later. And everyone on the trip, I would say,
You could do
was a big
both.
win. No one was like, everybody, let's all hand in, like everywhere
Yeah.
we go has to be the same. So I thought that was great. So this was one of the things my husband and I just did together because I really wanted to go to Roussillon. I was like, oh, I want to see it. The drive was so pretty from where where we're staying. It was only 40 minutes away.
Yeah, the roads are very, you get these windy, beautiful little roadways there. Yeah, it is it's quite scenic. And Roussillon is scenic.
It is very scenic.
Yeah.
It was very
also
nice.
Tourist.
It was busier than even say Castille. Like it was busier than I expected. It was also market day there. So I think that's probably why.
Yeah.
So, there's actually looks like a beautiful little hike, in the town, which we didn't do because it was just people on people on people. So we said, you know what? We enjoyed the town. I liked walking around and seeing all the sights. I love the drive there, but we'll come back another day when there's a little bit less people.
Yeah.
And so if people, don't like a lot of people, then also maybe not on market day. We didn't know. We just showed up.
Yeah, that happens.
It was really fun to see the market.
Market attracts a lot of people. A lot of people. Sorry to rush you, but we do want to get to your number 10 was Troyes and Les Récits. So you like the architecture in Troyes. I've never been.
It's beautiful. And my husband can tell you the history way better than me, but it was very pivotal history in the Champagne region. They used to have a fair there where a lot of goods got exchanged from, across the world. And the architecture is just stunning.
Yeah, if it was a rich market town, they'd probably have beautiful buildings. That's usually what happens.
Very different architecture than other parts of France that we've been to. So it's a smaller town, definitely off the beaten track of Champagne.
Yeah.
But south of there is an area called Les Récits. And we drove it's only about a half an hour, 40 minutes south of Troyes. And we went there. And if you Google on a map, the Champagne houses, it's literally all Champagne houses in this tiny little area. Like you could walk from house to house. The only thing is we went on a Sunday and everything's closed on a Sunday there because it was off the beaten track. So that was the only thing about that area that I would say, if I had, we were arriving and we were adjusting at that time. If I'd thought about it, maybe we would have stayed in Epernay if we really wanted to see more Champagne houses. But we were okay with just enjoying the architecture and trying one or two, off the beaten path champagnes, which we did.
That's great.
So we loved that. So that's was a little place at the beginning to go.
Mm-hmm.
But the only reason why I was further down the list was really because it's not as touristy.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's closed on Sundays and Mondays, actually. Sundays and Mondays. So a lot of the restaurants, I was surprised that we have a lot of really rated restaurants, and they're all closed on Sundays and Mondays. Yeah.
All right. So we're not going to talk about the hotels and apartments. I will list them on the show notes if people want to know exactly where you stayed. Same with the restaurants. You listed your favorites. That's all great. But let's talk about what did you learn? What did you wish you had known ahead of time that perhaps things you haven't mentioned before? Well, we just talked about a couple, actually. Les Récits, everything was closed. And Epernay might have been a better choice. Okay, so something you wish you had known before, perhaps, or that things you didn't love as much.
Well, I wouldn't say I have one piece of information that we found out before we left, but we didn't realize, and that was villa insurance. So when you rent a villa in France, sometimes in the contract, it'll say you need to bring your own insurance for covering damages, etc. Which apparently, if you live in France, it's something that's part of your homeowner's insurance.
Yes.
Vacation rental insurance.
Yeah.
In North America, that's not a thing. So we ended up finding a company, and I listed the name, that does vacation rental insurance. And honestly, in the end, while it was an unexpected expense, it was still something our group was like, it's a good idea. All of us are different families. If something does happen, It's great to have coverage for the whole family, for all the different families, if we needed to, if an accident happened. So that was one thing. It doesn't happen all the time. If you go through vacation rental companies or Airbnb, it won't be there. But we rented directly from a woman who runs this villa in a very small town. And it was one of the things in the contract. I'd seen a few villa contracts, and sometimes it was in, sometimes it was not. So that's one tip that I would give, or one thing that we do a little bit different. One other tip is that if you're bringing kids to the World War sites, one thing that you can consider doing is actually have them research a soldier. So my husband does this with his students when they go. So we did that with the kids on the trip, where they looked up a soldier ahead of time, knew a little bit about them. And then when you go to the American cemetery or Beni-Sur-Mer or Vimy, one of the cemeteries there, you could find the soldier and leave a copy, or just pay your respects. If you're not going for family, if you don't have family that you're going to see, it's a great way to kind of get the kids involved. And
very true. Yeah, that's great advice. And there are soldiers that are highlighted once you get to the sites as well, because they know that it's good to bring it down. I mean, not that this soldier was that much more valorous. Is that a word?
Right. Just to give faces and give context and put some history behind it.
Yeah.
So I think that was good. I guess the other thing and other tip is always add extra time for bathroom breaks. So, that's just, and I think the thing about when you're thinking about a tour area is that the bathrooms, there may not be, like 5 stalls, or, they may not be big bathrooms. So that's the thing. That's the thing that may slow you down a little bit as a group, because it's one bathroom or 2 bathrooms, depending on where you're going. So it's not so much that I think we stopped more than a normal group or anything.
No, but it takes a while every time.
It takes a while every time.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that we realized as we were going through. If we're touring as a group, you have to just be prepared for that. And factor that in when you're kind of planning.
And I like what you mentioned about Canadians and getting a SIM or eSIM for your trip, because that's so expensive in Canada. That's hopefully going to change. But for now, that's how it is.
It is so expensive. So I've heard a few people mention it about the SIM card on your podcast before. And we did get the eSIM from Orange. My tip with that is that if you're looking up eSIMs and you want to go with the actual provider, like we did, like Orange, just be careful when you're Googling, because there's a lot of third-party providers. So if you click on just the first link, you're going to just go to a third-party provider for the SIM. It's not necessarily bad. It's not that you're not going to get the right thing, but it's just you're going to pay a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you're getting it through them. Orange has a great travel SIM card, eSIM card, that gives you a little bit of international calling, all calling in France, and lots of data. So that was extremely valuable for us throughout the trip.
And an eSIM is, you don't actually remove your SIM card from your phone, but it's kind of an app that you install.
Yeah, there's a whole step-by-step process. So the eSIM, you actually load the SIM, virtually onto your phone, and you're basically switching off your North American, turning on your France SIM. So you're not physically removing the SIM card. When you sign up for it, Orange will give you step-by-step on what to do. You can set it up before you leave and just turn it off. Or you can set it up when you're on Wi-Fi, when you arrive. You just want Wi-Fi because you do have to connect to the internet to do some things. But yeah, it's fantastic. What we did was we set it up before we left. Right before we turned on airplane mode, we turned off our old SIM, turned on our France SIM. So when we turned off airplane mode, when we land, we were already on our France SIM card. So that worked out great. And most of the people of the group did that. Even, we were a mixed group of Americans and Canadians.
Yeah.
The Americans did. My caution for the Americans is that you have to check if you can unlock your phone. In Canada, it's law that your phone's come unlocked now. In the US, you could have a locked phone. If you have a locked phone, the eSIM or other SIM would help you.
Yeah,
so you just need to check before you go on whether you can unlock it or not. And even if it's not unlocked to start, you might be able to get it unlocked.
Right. Yeah. The only thing to be careful of is when you have an eSIM like this, you have a fair bit of data. But if you have people in your group who are used to streaming YouTube all day long or TikTok all day long, it's going to eat up your data very quickly. So, just they have to get their own account and their own eSIM. Otherwise, Mom, I'm sorry, I watched TikTok for 3 hours this morning and we're out of data for the day.
Yeah. But can top up. Then you start paying to top up. When we were researching it, we found there were providers out there. We didn't get them, but there's providers that do unlimited data only for a very reasonable price. But we wanted to have the phone capability, calling capability too. But for a kid, for one of the kids' iPads or it's a kid's device where they're not going to be using telephone, you could consider they seem very reasonable too. We never used them.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah. We have been talking a long time. We got to stop. But this was really, really excellent. And there's more great stuff. Like you talk about apps and other things in your document. But mostly it's the SNCF app, the train app. That is obviously, if you're going to take the train, you need that. So
yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. And you like the Wanderlog app as well, which I don't know anything about.
It's a newish travel app where you can put all your reservations, all your itinerary into the app, and the group can all sign up and
they can all see it.
Yeah. So there's another app out there called TripIt that a lot of people we've used before. This one's like the newer one.
I've heard of TripIt, yes.
You've heard of TripIt? Yeah. TripIt, it's great. You can also do the sharing. This is another version of that. It's a little bit more, I'd say it's trying to do a lot in one. So because it's newer, not all the features I'd say are top, the best. But what I loved about it was you could really easily navigate through the itinerary, see all the reservations. We could, if someone booked something, we could attach it in. So we had the attachment of the reservation right there. So it was nice. The group could all jump in and see what we were doing every day.
Fantastic.
Or what was booked for.
Right, for that day. Yeah. Yeah. Jen, thank you so much for talking to me. This was wonderful. And, you're ready to open your own tour company now.
Actually, it's something I just love doing. But yeah, it is fun to.
But you have to pay attention to details and you have to keep on top of things. Otherwise, you get overwhelmed.
You do. And can I give one last tip? For us, planning group travel, you have to figure out what is the most important element of your trip and start there, not necessarily chronologically, like book my hotel here and here and here, because the villa was the most important thing for us. We were going to be all under the same roof for a week. It was our 50th. It was very important that the accommodations met a ton of criteria, which, were not necessarily there was a lot of different pieces we had to figure out. It ruled out a lot of villas. We rearranged our itinerary a few times until we found the villa that we really wanted. And then after that, all the other planning was a little bit easier. So the other thing for the group is figure out what's important to you, whatever that may be, and start there. And making sure everyone's good with that. Everything else, once we had the villa, we could.
It worked.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah. Listeners, you're very lucky. She found it for you, and it's going to be listed in the show notes. So there you go.
Yes.
Merci beaucoup, Jenny.
Merci. Bonne journée.
Au revoir. Bonne journée.
The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2023 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.